It's not easy to fake nature indoors, and you would think it's difficult to fool the human eye. Usually it is, but when you throw painters, sculptors, engineers, architects together and light it perfectly, you can make magic happen. The dioramas of the American Museum of Natural History in New York are an amazing example of artists performing at their very best to serve science and conservation. From the first to the last, we count several generations of artists who contributed to these magical hallways. What is important to know is that these artists did not reveal themselves through their work. They were to completely suppress any personal style, manner, or recognizable characteristic of themselves. They had to be true to nature, with no artifice, no stylistic effect, just true and pure, to reach the absolute illusion, where no one would feel like they were looking at a human construction, but rather witnessing a privileged moment offered by nature. So how are they made? Well, essentially we have a stuffed animal set in front of a wall inside a small room which has an opening for us to look into. The mounted specimen, sculpted through the art of taxidermy, is positioned with dynamic intention in front of a painted outdoor scene. The wall has to be smooth and curved to avoid corners and angles that would otherwise create lines and artificial boundaries. The wall and the mounted specimens are created along one another so as to harmonize them in a gradual process of observing their tonal relationships. Of course, we need highly skilled painters and sculptors, but we also need good lighting. Both the background and foreground need to work in harmony, so careful balance needs to be found. No spotlights, for example. This would create sharp shadows across the walls, and the illusion of space would be destroyed. The audience is directed to be in a certain position, from the edges of the glass frame. In the bison group, there are smaller members of the herd in the distance that are distorted as the wall curves around more at the edges. If you looked at them from the inside of the diorama, you would observe a very strange shape of a bison spreading out a little bit like a marshmallow. But from the correct viewing point beyond the glass, the stretched out image compresses to give the viewer a natural shape. A clever trick is to pose an animal so that it's looking towards the artificial horizon. This triggers the viewer to be fooled even further. In the caribou setup, one of them on the left is looking back at a group of birds flying out of the heather. Anyone good enough at painting can create a sense of space and distance to fool anyone, as long as the audience keeps their distance. But these dioramas still fool the eye from just 2 meters away. That is all up to how the boundary zone is arranged. Sometimes it's hidden by tall grass, a fallen log, or some vines, but in some instances it is staring at you right in the face and you still don't see it. As in the Yellowstone Park scene, with the coyotes on the edge of the bank. Finding repetition of forms in the boundary zone helps fool the eye into stepping across that invisible line. In the Alaska bear group, the tall grass hides much of the boundary, but one area is open. The streaks of real sand in the foreground are continued in paint onto the wall, making the boundary disappear. Your eye is more interested in following the dominant design rather than any more insignificant line suggesting a wall. Your eye is being directed without you knowing. To help the transition from wall paint to actual object under the specific lighting, the painter will sometimes add touches of paint to the foreground objects to help the two worlds blend together even more. The dark hallways help enhance the light coming out of the viewer, and the glass also contributes to keeping you back enough. But still, when you are looking at James Perry Wilson's work or William Lee's, the illusion is still hard to break, even with your nose on the glass. You have in Gothenburg a small series of dioramas at your own National History Museum. You should go check them out.